very good morning to you. You're listening to Radio Sri Lanka on 97.4, 97.6 island-wide. And today we're going to talk about a very sensitive topic. And I think no matter how much we touch on this topic, this still persists. And we see this around in our country. And it's happening world over. You can't say it's just in Sri Lanka. We have a volunteer who's at Mr.Jomo with us to talk about the World Suicide Prevention Day, which falls today, and tell us a bit about the current situation here in Sri Lanka with regards to the suicide rates.
Okay, shall I first talk to you a little bit about the World Suicide Prevention Day,
Sure.
Which is actually an awareness day observed on the 10th of September every year since 2003 to provide worldwide commitment and action to prevent suicides. The theme for the last 3 years has been working together to prevent suicide, because we all have a role to play and together we can collectively address the challenges presented by the issue of suicide. So today at Sumitro, we are requesting people to light a candle at 8 p.m. outside their window to remember people who have lost their lives by suicide, and also to think about the survivors of suicide. So we ask everybody, if they can, to light this candle so that it will have some kind of a glow in people's hearts.
So that's what Sumitra intends to do on Suicide Prevention Day. So as I previously asked you, if you could elaborate on the suicide rates in our country especially.
Okay, I'll start off with, in the 1950s, we had a very low suicide rate of 6 per 100,000, which escalated to 47 per 100,000 in 1995, and which was the world's highest rate at that time. So the government panicked, and a presidential task force was formed, and stakeholders joined that task force, and Sumitra included, and came up with some policies which were implemented very well. That was in 1995. And the suicide rate came down to 24 per 100,000 in 2003. Due to those policies, I'll tell you a few of them were, the act of suicide was decriminalized. Before that, it was a criminal offense to take your life. So there was a stigma attached to it. Then there was a life skills program that was started off by the Ministry of Education to teach children life skills at that age so that they can learn to identify feelings and improve their decision-making skills. And the other important thing was that they banned highly toxic pesticides, which was really the medium through which people were taking their lives at that time. So that helped a lot. And today, it is 16 per 100,000.
That's good.
It is good, but we are a little bit skeptical. The reason is that there is no data on the attempted suicides. Mm-hmm. And we are a little bit worried that the attempted suicide rate has also escalated. So if the attempted suicide rate has escalated, it means the issue that causes people to take their lives has not been addressed enough. People's lives are being saved because of the improvement in infrastructure, transport, hospitals. So they're getting into hospital in time because of good roads and transport. And good first aid is being imparted to them. So that is the situation where the statistics are concerned.
So what we really don't know right now is the amount of people who have attempted to suicide. And speaking of this, why don't we touch on why people decide to do this?
Well, people who want to take their lives, from our experience, do not want to die. What they want to do is to stop the pain. It's the pain that they want to stop. It's not, they don't look at dying as such, that I want to die. It's the pain has become so much stacked up over a period of time, which has been unaddressed. People have not listened to them, not kind of identified the changes in their behavior, and they have felt isolated. And that's the reason. It's like, I'll just tell you quickly how it can happen. Mm-hmm. If you look at stacking books one on top of the other, you finally come to a point where the last book collapses the entire pile. That is the point at which people take their lives in their emotional well-being. Do you understand that?
Yes, and well, sometimes they tend to do it because of, I guess, the way people think. So in social life, and it's different because sometimes when you're in a traditional country, and it can be a stigma to be who you are, and sometimes it's difficult to speak to people as well. So, what do you have to say about this? Because obviously, the home front should do something about it to make it comfortable for the family members to talk whatever it is openly.
Yes, it's a good question, really, because one aspect I can touch on is on the LGBTQ issues, which people find very, very difficult to understand and accept in our society. And because of our culture and etc., although there's a lot of activity, people are proactive in trying to talk about it and come out with it, it's not enough really. So people do feel isolated, they feel kind of targeted, and the stigma is sometimes too much to bear. So there are many people with who are LGBTQ who sometimes have suicidal thoughts. That's one aspect of it, and there are other aspects too also, and the aspect of mental illness. Mental illness is also a stigma where people do not want to seek help. Because
is it because that people think if you say that you're going for counseling, you're going to talk about what you feel to someone else, it's they consider this person mentally ill?
Yes, but I think from what I have observed, things are changing in Colombo. Sometimes it even becomes fashionable for people to go and see a therapist today.
Which is good because
it's okay.
I think
it's positive.
social media is also playing a massive role here.
It's positive, but what we are missing out in here is that the highest suicide rates are out there in the rural areas, that is in the central province, north central province, Puttalam areas. And there is no help there. So in Colombo, people are more or less inundated with help. And they can reach out to people. There are so many organizations offering help on the phone, face-to-face, whatever. But if you look at the other areas, there's hardly anybody who offers help there. And that is where the highest suicide rates are. So the suicide rate is high because people have not had help. They don't know where to go to there.
They're not aware, basically, because sometimes it's with technology not being available there and access.
You're right. But we do have people at calling us at Sumitri or from faraway places on the phone, and we are able to befriend them, and we are able to help them come out of their emotional conflicts.
Has Sumitra planned on spreading awareness to the rural areas? Have you made any initiative per se to spread the news that you all are there for them?
Yes, there are branches in a few areas out there also, and they're quite active. But we need to be a little bit more proactive, and people need to know that there's a place to go to, and all those branches also are in the city.
True.
You know what I mean? So getting there at that time, people feel a little bit uncomfortable coming out from their farming areas into the city.
Sometimes they feel uncomfortable to step out of the house as well.
Definitely, and they don't know whom they're going to meet, whether they'll be comfortable with that person. Of course, all the general hospitals have a psychiatric ward, but psychiatry is not the first step that you should take to, medication. You need somebody to first listen to you, empathize with you, show you options, and not try to problem solve.
It's just to give them some comfort.
Absolutely. And to show them that someone cares.
Exactly. You're listening to Radio Sri Lanka, and as I mentioned towards the beginning, we are certainly discussing about a very sensitive topic, and we touched on the local situation and the rate of suicide here in Sri Lanka in brief. So let's talk about this on the global situation. How big of a problem is suicide globally?
Yes, it's quite a big and developing problem. WHO data has been stating quite consistently now for the last few years that over 800,000 people take their lives per year. So we really don't know why they have not kind of, given us better figures, because that over 800,000 figure has been there for about 5 years consistently there. And over and above that, what they say is that for every person who takes their lives, 25 people attempt to take their lives. So then you're talking about 21 million people either completing suicide or attempting suicide.
And there are people with that thought also running in the head.
Absolutely. So if you look at it in the context of Sri Lanka's population is 22 million. So you're talking about the entire population of Sri Lanka in this suicidal mode
In the world.
per year, So that
Globally.
then when you think of it that way, you can know how many people are affected by it. But one thing I must say is that we must be a bit careful when we talk about statistics and data, because sometimes vulnerable people out there who read that 21 million people are thinking about suicide, why not me?
Exactly.
Okay? So it kind of normalizes suicide. So we must be very careful when you disseminate information. And there is a thin line between promoting suicide and preventing suicide. So as stakeholders, we are extremely careful about that, about disseminating data to people. And the media also should be very careful about that. Because vulnerable people out there are going to get affected by this. This is not only me. 21 million people are thinking like me. So why not?
True enough. And what is the role of the community and the media in this aspect?
Well, if you look at the community first, it's about identifying people who are having conflicts within themselves. And that is by observing people, looking at body language, looking at other signs. Like, they may not having an appetite, they may be, listless, or they may be, saying things that which they normally do not say. Like, I'm fed up of life, or so you have to look for those messages and then address it.
Exactly. Sometimes we don't take those very seriously even when someone says this is what they feel like. People tend to,
They kind of,
ignore
make a joke about it.
make a joke about it.
Just forget about it, man. Just come have a drink with me and, forget about it. That's how they kind of shun it.
Yeah, but what they don't realize is that you need to sit and talk to the person.
Definitely. And you have to spend time with that person, quality time in listening to that person. Listening more than talking, and not trying to problem solve or give advice, but maybe offer options.
True.
Show them another way that they can try out, open a door or two or a window for them to look out. So that's how we should look at it, the community. Looking at the media, Mr.Jomo has always been kind of on this World Suicide Day. We always have a press conference, except for this time, where we talk to them about, not glamorizing suicide. If you look at some newspaper reports and web pages too, they glamorize suicide to an extent where you can develop a copycat syndrome, where people who are vulnerable see by pictures how you can you can hang yourself.
The options are provided.
They show the method. They might publish love letters.
And elaborate on how it was done, the situation and everything.
Definitely. And the most important thing what we ask the media to do is that if you do cover a suicide, please also offer a helpline detail at the bottom for vulnerable people to contact. So Mr.Jomo or any other stakeholder who is addressing the situation.
So that should be, I think, something which should be implemented ASAP, because reading and getting to know, because we also come across many celebrities doing this. And we can't say, sometimes people say money is the problem. We can't say, because depression can come in many ways to everybody.
Yeah.
And many people can go through problems even though they have everything in life.
Yeah.
And the issue is we see a lot of people who are judgmental.
Of course.
And when we look at a person's outlook, you can never say, because I've also come across people who look quite normal on the outside, but they've got a lot of issues going on. And let's talk about the trends seen in suicide data in Sri Lanka, which must be considered.
Yes, that's very important too. I'm glad you asked me that, because if you look at trends, the most important trend we see is that the ratio of men to women are 4:1. But from our research and research from out there too, women do have more suicidal thoughts than men, but they don't complete suicide, because there is some connection that they have in their lives, networking, they seek help at the correct time probably, but when you look at men, their gender roles are a bit different, and their stereotypes are different.
They're problem solving. They
Not only that,
want it
they
solved.
think that they don't have to have feelings. Men are masculine, they are tough. They should not feel hurt or sad or hopeless. So they don't seek help at the correct time. So we need to change that attitude of men, and tell them that seeking help can also be a masculine thing. It's not a kind of
It's not a brave thing to do. I mean, suicide is obviously not a brave thing to do. So
yeah, so they let it stack up, and at that, when they finally want to take their lives, they have no rationale about their gender role or whatever it is.
And you mentioned a little bit about the warning signs given by a suicidal person, which the community
Yes.
should be aware of. So mainly
Yes,
it's
so-
depression, and usually a person who is suicidal, I think, first tells it out.
Yeah.
Only when this person doesn't get any support from the outside world, that's when they kind of keep it deep inside, and then, as you mentioned, stack it up.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a few warning signs that people who are listening into the program could think about and keep it in their minds. When people start talking about wanting to die or kill themselves, talking about feeling hopeless or having no purpose in life, talking about feeling trapped or being in unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others, increasing the use of alcohol and drugs, acting anxious, agitated, or reckless, sleeping too little or too much, withdrawing or feeling isolated, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge, displaying extreme mood swings. So I've given a lot of warning signs which
Cues,
people can
exactly.
cues, or triggers or whatever it is, which people can think twice about when they see this happening. They can ask some open-ended questions from that person and really get the problem out,
Exactly, and without making a fool of the person, because
or
the
there's
things-
labeling the person, you're useless, you're always like this, or you're taking alcohol too much. There's always a reason why people misbehave, or
How about bullying? Bullying is also, I
Of
think,
course.
playing a massive role
Definitely.
in encouraging
self-harm.
people to head
Self-harm.
into
I
this.
mean, a lot of children in schools today self-harm. I mean, they don't go into the act of suicide as much as self-harming themselves, cutting themselves, because they can't bear the bullying.
True, and I think when it comes to bullying, now we see this a lot at school, universities, or even at workplaces maybe. But everything starts at school at a very small age. Sometimes we see kids bullying each other. So I think the home front, the family, parents need to play a massive role in terms of teaching their children on how they should treat everybody equally.
Definitely. But the thing is, the bully also comes from a broken home. So that is where it all starts there. So the bully comes from a home that is a little bit dysfunctional, right? And he's coming out to show his anger, to hurt people, because probably he's being hurt at home, he or she. So then they
Exactly.
take it on the weaker people. And that weak person or the weak boy or girl has nowhere to go to, because even the school sometimes doesn't help them. They say fight your own battles is one thing that people have always said, no? When you go to complain or kind of
Yeah, they don't
talk
take it
about,
seriously.
They don't say, you fight your own battles, come on, be tough, be a man. So how can they if they can't?
If they can't.
And there's
yes.
nobody to support them, to show them how. The schools don't show children how to handle their difficult feelings. Schools don't show them how they can cope better.
And I've also heard that in certain universities abroad, they do have a counselor and they do have someone to talk to.
Yes, I think most of the international schools in Colombo too do have a counselor, and that's a very good move, really. But I'm not very sure about public or government schools, but they should, because there's a lot of psychologists, passing out today, hordes of them, and they need jobs, and what better job than being a school counselor, because you're in touch with the real issues of the youth.
Exactly. And why don't we touch on the age group?
Yes. So if you look at the suicide trend where age is concerned, 35% of suicides occur between 15 and 35 years old. Then 25% occurs between 36 and 50. 30% between 50 and 70. And over 70 is 10%. So there again, for policy makers and stakeholders to to develop preventive methods, they should study trends. It's very important. Now, for instance, suicide rate in Colombo and the Western Province has always been low because of the help that is available. But if you look at the rural areas, like I said before, it's very high. But that's not been addressed.
Exactly.
There are no counseling centers out there.
And are there any myths about suicide which needs to be clarified?
Yes, there are many myths which I can talk to you about. And it's also interesting because for the community too to understand and kind of realize how myths can also prevent people from seeking help or giving people help, most importantly. So one myth is people who are suicidal want to die. The fact is the majority of people who feel suicidal do not actually want to die. They do not want to live the life they have. The distinction may seem small, but it's very important. It's why talking through other options at the right time is so vital. Another myth is talking about suicide is a bad idea, as it may give someone the idea to try it. Suicide can be a taboo subtopic, but by asking someone directly about suicide, you can give them permission to tell you about it. So they have a chance to talk about it. Then people who say they are going to take their own life are just mentioning attention seeking and shouldn't be taken seriously. But you will always find somebody who has taken their lives have said something about it somewhere down the line, and people have not taken notice of it. So those myths should be kind of discontinued, or people should look at it very closely.
They should take it seriously.
Of course.
And how about the survivors of suicide? How do they cope?
That's also a very interesting point that you're raising now, because people do not think about survivors. Survivors undergo a lot of stigma due to the suicide in the family. And there is something called a wall of silence that is built around them, where people are unable, or they cannot, people don't have the courage to go into that house and find out really what really happened. They think it's something very, very personal. So they cannot kind of touch on it. And they don't know how to do it really. Because that a suicide in the family always brings some kind of, foreboding, or some kind of, they feel a little bit, it disturbs people. And they always talk about it in hushed tones, and there's nothing really directly spoken about. So the people who are in this household often think that the people out there blame them for the suicide. So there's a lot of guilt that develops if it's not addressed properly. Then again, if there is a suicide in a family, say a boy has taken his life, the girl who is remaining may not be able to marry, because people don't like to marry into a family where there has been suicide, because they associate suicide with mental illness.
That's very sad. And what could people who are feeling very depressed now? This is a message going out to the general public. What could they do, and how do they contact Sumitrayo?
Yeah, it's now if you talk, Sumitrayo is open 365 days a year. We never close, and we open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So you can walk in or you can give a call. The telephone number is 2692909. That's the hotline really, and they could call us or call over there. You don't have to make appointments, and they can be assured of a non-judgmental session,
And a
confidential, non-judgmental session where there is no advice given or no problem solving done. Most of the time, we listen to the people.
And I think we did touch on a very, very important topic. And you mentioned that to mark the World Suicide Prevention Day, you wanted people to light a candle, if possible, at 8 p.m.
Yes, that is to show that they remember people who have taken their lives, and also they feel for the people who have survived suicide. So we are doing it at our premises at 8 o'clock, and we would love to see candles around Colombo or wherever showing
some support. And obviously acknowledge that we are all there for them.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Joe, for
My
being a
pleasure.
part of the show.